Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is Nathan Kent. We work together, but I think that... Well, even whenever the first time that I saw you at work, I think I was like, this is a cool dude. Like... or even the first thing that I said to you was like... The first real thing I said to you was like, you look like a guy who listens to Modest Mouse.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Well, of course, what do you do?
I'm a visual artist. I mostly work in drawing, so I guess I'm a drawer. And I make images, so essentially what I'm doing is kind of playing off of abstraction, which has been going on forever, but doing it kind of backwards. So I make abstract sculptures, like non-forms that mimic forms, and then draw them like representationally from life, like direct representational, so pretty accurate. And then I just make a lot of like replications on that theme, I guess. So a lot of what I do is kind of taking traditional medias that have existed for hundreds of years and kind of mixing and matching them with like new media that I don't know anything about or that I'm learning about as I'm kind of playing with.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just that kind of superimposition of literally like layering things. Like here's an old thing, here's a new thing, I'm just going to slap it on top of it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to kind of work it out as you look at it. So,
Man, it's hard to express visual art on an audio podcast, but I will say that like your work is really cool, and yeah, you do just have to see it. I've always been, like I told you last night, I've always been kind of bad at like interpreting art, like what is this trying to say? But I feel like the stuff that you do and the stuff that you're into has always been, or it seems like does really cool stuff. Other than just trying to say something, it does really cool stuff.
yeah, I'm influenced by a lot of like conceptual artists and a lot of process-driven artists rather than like narrative artists, or like whenever you look at like still lifes from the Dutch masters from forever ago, there's always these kinds of like symbols and things that you have to like pick up on, and then you kind of like put the pieces together to find what they're trying to tell you. And I always thought that was kind of like narcissistic in a lot of ways. That like I have this message as an artist that other people don't, and you have to like solve my clues to know genius or something. And I just never really like believed in the idea of the secluded genius or the artistic genius. I think that it's kind of just an expression of the way that you see your personal perspective in a lot of ways. So I'm a pretty analytical dude, so I kind of do analytical things.
Yeah.
I give myself formulas and recipes and make according to what interests me.
Yeah. I want to like break down at least how you got to that, but at least even at the very beginning, what brought you to art?
Well, I've always drawn as a kid. You know, I grew up in the like early 90s, so when I was like 6 years old, or younger than that even probably, I was drawing like Sonic the Hedgehog off of my underwear and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and off of my backpacks and stuff. And yeah, I got really obsessed with like copying and replications in a lot of ways. But I'd also like find these like themes that I'd be really interested in for some reason. Like I loved the story of Pinocchio since I was like a little tiny kid, and just this kind of like finding the definition of life based on this kind of like this set of factors of like what is it to be alive. And so like the fact that a doll could be alive or like could have human like qualities. It was really weird and interesting. And in the movie, there was this scene where he like goes inside this cave, and the cave turns out to be a whale. I'm like, how could you tell the difference between a cave and a whale just by seeing if it was like motionless? And these kinds of like, I don't know, the concept of like a living cave. And so I just kind of like make these drawings and these stories as a kid that ended up evolving into like what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a long, complicated story, but to like limit it to like just undergrad into kind of what I'm doing now. After my undergrad, before my postgrad stuff, I was really interested in death and obsessed with like, I don't know, the psychology of death. Before I was an art major, I was a psychology major, and I wanted to be a grief and bereavement counselor. I wanted to talk to people about grief and that kind of things. It was too heavy of a subject for me, but I would keep coming back to it in my art, and eventually I kind of like tried to get completely away from it, but I was still interested in these artists like Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud specifically, were these two like British artists that knew each other, and they were painters, but they had this like idea that like art was a super genuine thing that you had to like draw from life and paint from life, and interested in these kind of like grotesque subject matter. So I'd buy these pigs' heads from Super Cow, which is like this local Asian market, and I'd take them to my house and put them on my dining room table. I lived with my mom at the time, so she would just come home from work and there'd be like dead animal parts everywhere. And eventually, like, you just kind of like grow accustomed to like being around these things, and you form kind of emotional attachments. So I would make names for them and stuff, and then eventually I just kind of like thought about like how life in general, like how they don't really have a life, I guess. And I wanted my drawings to be kind of a memorial for that, and like a funeral service in a way. So like drawing is like a memorial for the dead, like a ceremonial act in some ways. And then it just got too heavy because of like personal stuff that happened and like loss and things. So but I kept the kind of like still life drawings and my interest in natural forms and mimicry, and kind of became more formal in some ways.
Yeah.
So I think that as you progress as an artist, you like go in these like ways of like more and less formal and more and less aware of yourself as a maker, and like this like meta concept of that and less. And so now my work, it kind of addresses this kind of like pointlessness and hand replication. And so one of the pieces that I showed you that's up now at my show, it's called Hours of Work to Pointless and Confusing Ends. And basically it's just me drawing from a drawing from a drawing from a drawing. And the original was a drawing made from a sculpture. And eventually I just kind of like made the system that objectively omitted information as it went in the sequence, and it would be nothing at the end. And kind of to illustrate this concept of absurdity, I guess. So
that's really cool. The other question I was going to ask, because I do want to get back to like specifically what you're saying in your art, but then it's also like still the beginnings. So why did you choose this over like what some people would say like more concrete or productive or whatever?
Oh, like a different, like a real job?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I have like an entrepreneur's brain, that whole like old adage of I'd rather put like 80 hours of work doing like working my ass off to try to make it than to do like 40 hours a week of just normal ass shit. I just can't do it. I'm always get such a baby about like a full-time job and it taking away from stuff I actually like want to do. And I always have these like ideas, and I always get so like bogged down in these like routines that take me away from it. So I guess that's what it is. It's just me not being satisfied with normal stuff. Not to take away from that if other people are into it, but.
And then what's sort of like a struggle being an artist?
It's not what you would think. It's not what anybody really like thinks. I think like the biggest struggle is people seeing it, like commodifying it. Like I make work to interest like myself and to make kind of thoughts experiments and to originally to like make aware things that like don't have, that I feel are like disenfranchised, that don't get enough like credit. And I feel like the role of an artist in some ways is to bring attention to that and all those things. And I think that like my struggle isn't necessarily like that I'm not making money or whatever. It's to not be like academically or intellectually like appreciated in some way, like people that like go to your show but don't read your artist statement and like that kind of thing. And I think that that's always what's kind of upset me about it, like since I started caring about it and being like a professional somewhat artist.
Kind of going towards the like more of what your art says, like you said that like you focus on sort of these non-forms and sort of recreating them. So even whenever you were showing me like some of your influences, that you really like the non-form. What's important about the form and the lack thereof?
Well, the important thing is to know that, like, I guess in my belief, humanity isn't capable of a truly non-representational image. We always derive meaning from anything that we see. It's just kind of like this thing that we do. We're always looking for faces and clouds and all kinds of... We're always so distracted about, like, possibilities and potentials and classifying and boiling things down and distilling things into these perfect pieces. And I guess it all goes down to like Plato and his that kind of like dualism of the world of forms, and everything exists somewhere in their most perfect form, and the idea of the quintessential, I guess, is what I'm talking about. So to take something that, at least to attempt to make work outside of those, is interesting to me. To try to like, I feel like people have been representing since the beginning of art. Like art started as like a representation of people and a representation of animals and what we see, and to try to create something completely different is I think it's interesting. And to make it so like anticlimactic, I think, is also like the biggest anti-joke. And I think that that's so much of what contemporary art is about, is something that's completely pointless and ridiculous that takes itself way too seriously. And I think that that's what interests me about non-forms in general, is there's things that you could never really associate with anything, but it's still made from materials that you associate with, that you see every day. It's just out of context, I guess. And then to make a drawing from that, like, you can tell that it's a drawing made from life, made from observation, made of something that has like natural conditions. It like exists in a space. So it's not like a non-representational drawing like a Jackson Pollock or something, because you can tell that it's like has some sort of form, like some sort of representation, but for all intents and purposes, it's like basically a non-representational work.
Yeah.
And that just kind of like addresses this sort of absurdity that interests me and kind of acts as a metaphor for, I guess the day-to-day bullshit of life in some ways. Like,
there's like a level of conceptual art and like contemporary art that's just like incredibly highbrow and like high concept. Do you like acknowledge that, or do you just not care?
Well, I think it all goes back. Like, yeah, I've moved past like Lucian Freud and Francis Bacon as like influences in a lot of ways, but also like it's a genuine artist thing. Like, if they're genuine about their message and not just wanting to be popular or wanting to like follow some kind of trend, like Sol LeWitt is an artist that I didn't necessarily like reference to you, but basically what his thing was is he would like spend all day in his studio making these recipes for these drawings, and he would send them out to people, what he would call his draftsmen, and they would go to the museums and the galleries and basically like follow his recipes. So like he'd say like make a sphere, like make a circle on a wall out of 10,000 lines, and that's it. So like they would make 10,000 lines, and then that would be considered a Sol LeWitt piece because he orchestrated it, right? But he never touched the piece. He never even went to the gallery. So that's like talking about, is art the idea? Is art the thing that you see on the wall? Is art the artifact, or is it separated from the artifact? And like whenever you start like getting into these like really conceptual stuff, like it starts making you think these like weird things about not just about art and the nature of art and the nature of selling things and selling art, but the nature of like life in general in some ways. And those are the kind of things that's when contemporary and highbrow art is valid, and in other ways it's not. Like Tom Friedman is another artist that's a contemporary artist that I don't necessarily resonate as well with. Not to take anything away from his work, but he's kind of like a contemporary artist for the sake of being a contemporary artist. So he once stared at a canvas for like 10,000 hours, and the piece was called like 10,000 Hours of Stare, but it was a blank canvas. So it was kind of like about like, does the artist's attention have a sort of weight to it? Like, does that make that piece more or less valid because I'd stared at it for a certain period of time? So, I mean, it's a good thought, but I don't know. Like, and I think that's what it comes down to, and that doesn't necessarily interest me as much as other things. So. Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's where, at least as far as popular perception of contemporary art, where it starts getting really like meta-analytical, sort of the stuff that like Shia LaBeouf would do or something. That's where people get like, they laugh at it because it's like, well, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's also saying something. And it's still doing the same thing, I think, like by causing you to think about those things that they intended you to. And there's like a whole lot of philosophy behind art. Like I feel like there's like a lot of artists aren't just artists, they're also trying to make you be a philosopher with them. Well, what is it with, like, what's the connection between art and philosophy to you?
Oh, wow. Well, an artist is never just an artist, and it's been that way. Like, a visual artist is never really just a visual artist, and it's been that way for a long time. Everybody seeks, like, these kind of, like, meanings in there, and visual artists are very aware of that. So me not necessarily putting these symbols in my work is kind of a statement in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of ways, people are still looking for symbols, and the fact that they're not there is kind of like a statement, as if like I'm asserting my view of visual art.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's always been connected, especially in like fine art contexts from the beginning. So the role, I think that a visual artist and an artist in general, in a lot of ways, like you could consider like John Cage a philosopher. You know?
Yeah.
So I don't think that it necessarily like there's not a split there. I think it's kind of like both. Not all philosophers are visual artists, and not all visual artists are philosophers, but there's definitely like a vast majority of visual artists that are also philosophers in some ways. Even scientists are visual artists and that kind of thing. And in a lot of ways, the fact that they choose to like come out of their laboratories and make art is choosing to connect with philosophy in some ways. So.
Do you consider yourself to be a philosopher in some ways?
In some ways, yeah. I guess I'm influenced by philosophers, and I'm influenced by conceptual artists. So I guess in a lot of ways, I like have to be versed in philosophy. But I think that it's so elitist in a lot of ways. All philosophers, and they're so like redundant and pedantic that it's kind of like you can't really connect with them. So I guess in a lot of ways it's like I'm offended by myself calling myself a philosopher, because I'd like to be more approachable, but I realize that I'm not necessarily that much different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, exactly, because if I do think of someone who is a philosopher, they're sort of like, well, now you have to reference just this giant well of just philosophical ideas from the beginning of time, and if you don't, then you're just not a good philosopher or something.
Well, and it's also that, going back to what I was talking about the secluded genius, like a philosopher is somebody that sits around, reads books instead of talking to people, and writes the most like redundant shit. Like, yeah, there's good points, but you just keep like re-emphasizing the same point over and over again. All alone. It's like an echo chamber that never ends. So just kind of like, but I think that technology in a lot of ways people are having, it's more, philosophy has become more conversational. It's more like between multiple people, and it's less like arguments in a lot of ways. And I think that people aren't necessarily, philosophy is all about the arguments. It's all about white dudes disagreeing with other white dudes and arguing with each other in essays. So. But I think it's changing, and I think that that's a good thing.
Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, like, going back, like, you can be a visual artist without being a philosopher per se, but in the same way that whenever you are putting your art to cause people to think about stuff, you're sort of like making people think of the things in the way that a philosopher does.
Yeah, and I definitely resonate with certain philosophers that challenge me, I guess. Maybe like have similar like logic patterns that I do, so I relate to them, but also like think differently enough that I can disagree with them, I guess. And I think that like some of the French existentialists like Sartre and Camus and that kind of stuff, like that's the kind of the contemporary stuff is what I
and then I've sort of going back to, I guess, myself, but like how I'm sort of bad at interpreting art. Is there a difference between what your art is trying to say and what your art is just like doing? So like, do you respect whenever someone looks at your art and goes, hey, that looks cool, as opposed to going, I like what that says?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have an aesthetic. I feel like a visual artist is kind of responsible for their own aesthetic. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of this looks cool aspect of art. But I also want to be appreciated for the content, and I think that the aesthetic is just part of the content. Mm-hmm. And so you want to be appreciated for everything that you're putting effort into. Yeah. Which is the whole thing. But no, I'm never like offended. I think what I like about what I'm trying to do in my attempts of the art that I make is that everyone is kind of right about it. Like, somebody can look at it and be like, this doesn't make sense, and like, why would anybody like do this? This is stupid. Like, of course, that's exactly what it's about. Yeah. But if somebody wants to take the time to think about like why I would do it, and think about and can make these connections with like, well, he could be like having a 40-hour-a-week job and making money and eating and being fine. Like, why would he go through the trouble of spending hours to do this? Mm-hmm. And trying to think about like, get in my head about it, and then like connect that to like what they're doing, and making these kinds of like connections between like, well, why do I do a 40-hour-a-week thing? Or like, why do I do the things that I do? Yeah. And that kind of like turning like the lens back mm-hmm. is what I'm interested in as an artist, is trying to motivate people to become aware of the things that they're not aware of. In a lot of ways, so.
Do you think that a good aesthetic, and however subjective that may be, but do you think that like a good idea of aesthetics is necessary for being a visual artist, or are the ideas good enough for themselves?
Well, a good aesthetic is a consistent aesthetic, mm-hmm. and finding. So if your thing is like, my concept is this, and that requires me to make blank canvases, like, the aesthetic isn't necessarily there, but the presentation could still be there. Like, sure. How high on the wall do you put it? Or where on the wall do you put it? Do you put it on a wall? Do you hang it on the floor? Like, do you hang it from the ceiling? Like, presentation is so much of like aesthetic, and to the point,
that's going to be a gallery somewhere now.
Yeah, and so much of it has to do with like installation artists are basically like all about aesthetic in some way, shape, or form. They're all about like transforming a space to being a different space, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So much of that is like, basically you're distilling like all your art into presentation. Mm-hmm. So a lot of designers resonate with that kind of art making, of like this like aesthetic, like what's pretty, like, or like mm-hmm. what's interesting, or what's impactful, or what makes people turn their heads. And that's part of it. Is there like a recipe for a good aesthetic? I don't know. There's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about that. There's a lot of like art schools that really want you to have a solid foundation in drawing. Mm-hmm. I'm a drawer. I draw pretty well, but I put a lot of time into it. Yeah. And, do I think that you need to be good at drawing to be a good artist? No. To have a good aesthetic? No. But it's kind of just like what your content's about, what your message is about, and the funny thing about that is it's always changing. Like, 2 years from now, I might not even be drawing. So all of my drawing knowledge will be useless. I might just be like making computer programs that draw for me, or make sculptures that don't mean anything. One of the interesting things about the show that I'm in right now is I made these kinds of like programs. I just made these drawings that I vectorized in this program called Illustrator, mm-hmm. and but the freeware program that I used for the laser cutter didn't know how to read new Illustrator files. So I saved it as both, like the newest file and the oldest file just in case. So it read the oldest file fine, but the newest file, it didn't know, couldn't read it, but it would try. It would do its best. So it would come up with this like weird like octopus squiggly thing from the drawing, based on the drawings that I would do. I thought that was the weirdest thing that it would try. Like, why didn't it just think like, I can't read it. Sorry. But no, so I thought like that's so much of like what people try to do, and it's so much like a thought without language. Like if you handed me like some Chinese manuscript, am I gonna like try to like think about it based on like 3 characters that I know? Like, I don't know. So yeah, that's like a piece of my show is basically just like let the program think what it did, and then turned the laser cutter on, and it printed out this like weird thing and burned holes in things, and
that's pretty cool. And then there's an obvious difference between what can be considered fine art and like I guess consumer oriented art, like illustration and graphic design and stuff. What's, I guess in your view, what's the difference?
Well, that's crazy. Like that's like the biggest topic in my and there's no like we could go on for like days about that. There's no like real definition, and the definition that there is was established like it's so antiquated now. Like it can't keep up with technology. It can't keep up with like people and culture. And so in a lot of ways art has always been the slower one. It's all visual art in anyway, and like music kind of defines a culture, and like in a lot of ways visual art and like food and things like that, like those kinds of like artistic endeavors like define a culture, and visual art has always been like in the background critiquing things and like making this kind of like response to things. But now with like the popularization of like Instagram and like Reddit and forums and all this, like people are so like visual art, not just like photography, but visual art in general can be like so easily digestible. It has this opportunity to assert itself as like a driving force of culture, in my opinion. So like if people are resonating with it and liking it and communicating with it, that's art, you know, to me. So like memes are art. Like I don't necessarily like I read memes, everybody reads memes, but like that's an opportunity for everybody to participate in this kind of like visual art context, like putting text to like a weird image and making a statement about life. Like that's the artistic dream, is to like resonate with like everyone and for everyone to participate. Like all you have to do is know like the most basic of Photoshop to put a text with an image, and like you're golden, you're an artist now. So in a lot of ways like there is no divide, but then in a lot of ways like we were talking about, it's all in presentation and aesthetic. Like, do I think that every meme needs to go in a gallery space or be like on this like pedestal, for lack of a better phrase? Like, not necessarily, but I think that we as a culture kind of like curate experiences. So like is every meme good for every reason? No. But could you like find like 5 memes or 10 memes that define memes as they are in 2017 of January? Like so
almost like that Italian meme's pretty popular right now, so
or like the salt guy.
Well, that too. And it's great that, you know, we no, like memes really do, and not just internet memes obviously, but like memes do sort of shape culture, and in the same way, like, I mean, I call dogs doggo in my head now, like, and sometimes out loud. So, but I mean, sort of going, like, breaking it down even to a bigger distinction, like, is is the FedEx logo to be appreciated as much as, like, a Jackson Pollock?
Yeah, well, it's all contextual. Like, Jackson Pollock is Jackson Pollock because he was Jackson Pollock at the time that he was.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in that post-war, like, New York school kind of, like, non-representational way, like, nobody was making shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that stuff was new. Like,
Yeah.
and nobody thought it was art at the time.
Yeah.
But he was changing things, and he kept with it, and stuck with his aesthetic, and stuck with his content, and was making these action paintings where he would run around the piece and throw paint around, and everybody thought he was crazy, and some people thought he was a genius.
Yeah.
Because he was so different and innovative, and people had been painting portraits, but with the advent with the popularization of photography and the invention of some of these ways of getting things around, like, you didn't need to make portraits anymore. You didn't have to paint portraits. Like, the role of an artist was different.
Yeah.
But those portrait painters from back in the day were making comments on society.
Mm-hmm.
But contemporary artists now just are a lot more direct about it in some ways. So.
Yeah. A very bad bridge into the second segment of the podcast, but I will make it anyways. What do you believe?
Well, I think, like, I don't necessarily have, like, any, like, interesting, like, beliefs, but I think that one thing that I've kind of realized about life from being somebody that's just gone through art school and just being somewhat educated and seeing life in general and the political scene and all that, I think that just fighting, like, making a conscious effort to not be cynical. Like, critique all you want as long as it's productive, but when it starts being, like, paralytic and you start doing nothing or shutting yourself away from the world or starting only talking to people that agree with you completely and that kind of stuff, like, that kind of cynical mindset doesn't really help anybody, doesn't change anything, and doesn't really help yourself, and eventually you're just gonna, like, live day to day waiting, and waiting is the worst. So.
And then, like, as far as your beliefs in, like, spirituality or anything, like, at least to start, do you believe in God?
Yeah. It gets kind of complicated. I was raised Southern Baptist, kind of. My parents didn't really practice, and then I kind of got into it in high school and kind of got out of it. A lot of it had to do with politics. I was tired of... I went to college. My freshman year of college, I was active in this thing called the BCM, which is like a Baptist collegiate ministries kind of like club or something. And I was really into it. Did, like, Bible study stuff. I was really active in my church too. Read the Bible. I was always interested in reading, so I was active in this thing called the BCM, and they sponsored this group of people to come that were crazy pro-life. And I was never really, like, pro-life. I was always kind of, like, took a neutral stance on that kind of thing. But they've made these, like, giant posters, like, on these, like, displays. There's, like, 10-foot posters of these, like, printouts of dead fetuses next to dimes and bloody, like, stuff. And I was like, where is the love in this? Like, where is the acceptance in this? And I got so, like, kind of, like, taken aback. So I went and talked to the director, and I was like, so do you guys support this? Like, you guys brought these people here. Like, is this what you guys agree with? And I was like, because I don't. Like, I can't agree with this. You're alienating people. You're making people feel guilty about having abortions. And, like, that's a really complicated issue. Like, it's a really personal thing that's different for everyone. And it's between, like, them and God was always, like, my kind of philosophy. Like, anyway, but they were like, well, not necessarily, but... you know, they're with this program that funds us, so we have to support them.
Jeez.
And I'm like, funding? Like, that's what dictates morality? And so I just kind of walked away from it. And, you know, like, my church was really active with that same, like, place. And, yeah, I couldn't be a part of it and just kind of, like, left and never went back. As far as, like, being a Christian is concerned, like, I don't really associate myself with that anymore, not just because of, like, that experience or, like, the people or anything. Like, I have nothing against Christianity. I don't necessarily know if, like, I believe in Jesus as much, per se, or anything like that. But growing up in Oklahoma, you always have this kind of, like, conversation with people that kind of resonate with that. Anyways, you're like, yeah, I believe in, like, some kind of a higher power that dictates things or started it off. But I tend to take this kind of, like, existential view of that, like, if he is there, then he doesn't really, like, he's not necessarily interested in communicating with us. Or if he is interested in communicating with us, like, why doesn't he approach us at our terms in some ways, or make an effort to initiate, like, this kind of conversation? So I guess I just kind of got offended in that way, and then just kind of accepted, like, it for what it is. And, you know, like, I don't necessarily judge it, but I also I'm not, like, interested in pursuing some kind of, like, relationship with it if it's not interested in pursuing some kind of relationship with me. So it gets, like, complicated, but I think that it's impossible to, like, completely deny, like, to be, like, a complete, like, militant atheist and be like, there is no God, because how could you prove that? And at some point, I think militant atheists are so concerned with there being no God and proving to other people that there's no God, that why do they spend so much energy on something that they don't believe in? And it seems kind of pointless in that. But yeah, I mean, and shit just gets complicated.
But I mean, to another extent, being a Southern Baptist sort of formulated your morality.
Yeah, I could say that.
So where does your morality sort of sit around now?
Well, I think that I kind of believe I'm in line with thinking of Sartre and his kind of existential philosophy of, like, we decide our own morality. We're not without it, but it's up to us as people to be people that decide what's right and wrong, and it's up to society to kind of, in a lot of ways, try to formulate these kinds of laws based on not necessarily popular opinion, but I don't know. I think that society, I'm pretty optimistic in large part. So I think that society is primarily, like, altruistic. And I think that that's the whole reason why we've lasted as long as we have. If we were really, like, against each other and in true competition all the time, then we wouldn't have made it this far. We would have killed each other by now.
Sure.
So, not to say that we won't kill each other in the future, but so I think altruism is kind of what guides us, like, this kind of golden rule of, like, helping people and helping ourselves and everyone benefiting from doing good things.
Yeah. So I mean, how does that altruism help you sort of face day-to-day life?
I don't know. I think that, like, being friendly and trying to help people out, I think in a lot of ways, as new agey as it sounds, you kind of attract things to yourself. Like, if you're positive and you're helping people, then people are going to be more apt to help you, and people that you're going to be more apt to find relationships with people that benefit you. And I think that that's, at the end of the day, like, people want to be benefited and they want to benefit others, and I think that you find a kind of purpose in that. So even like I'm the kind of person that wants to be smiled at in public and treated nicely on the phone and whatever, so I'm not the kind of person that's going to cuss at random people or go to a grocery store and yell at people for stuff being spoiled when it's not the cashier's fault.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, so,
and then your art has a lot of like it says a lot of stuff about sort of the way that we face day-to-day life, and so how does that reflect onto the way that you live your life?
Well, I guess my art isn't necessarily like... My art is like a product of my life, but in a lot of ways I don't really think about, like, I don't like walk around with a sketchbook and like make all these ideas all the time. Like, I'm not that kind of artist, and I'm not like the kind of artist that thinks about, like, has thoughts and tries to like translate them into like a visual context in order to express, like, to like share that with somebody in a way that's like, I want you to change your life based on my experience kind of thing. But I do think that it affects my life in the way that I'm constantly doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a maker, so all my life is centered around like the act of drawing in like a formal sense. So like some moral and ethical things come out as me being a person, but it's not that I like inject them in there with the purpose of them like coming out. They just kind of happen because I'm feeling as I'm making, and I'm a maker, so I'm always making in some ways. And I'm such like a process driven artist that a lot of like what I do is so formal. Like the fact that I'm drawing from a drawing, like it's like hours of work to basically just enjoy the act of drawing. Like, I could be drawing anything.
Yeah.
So
I mean, in that sense, do you think that you put yourself into what you make, or does it does it reflect you, I guess?
I think it kind of like is a reflection. I think it goes back to what we were saying about, or what I was saying earlier about, like, people can't separate this kind of like humanity from anything. Like, there's no true non-representational image, and I think that everything is kind of this kind of reflection of everything that I make with my own hands is a reflection of me. It's a decision, you know. I choose to draw in a certain way with a certain material. I choose to like put another material on top of it. That's a reflection of like my process. That's how I approach drawing. That's like my perspective on things. So I make like certain decisions that like to other people don't necessarily make a difference, but to me is in a lot of ways the whole point of the work. So
I mean, I guess in a sense, like, do you do art to express yourself, like yourself, or do you do it to express something? So, since you're so process driven, you know?
I guess I've never really like thought about it in those terms. I feel like for me, no matter what I'm doing, art is just almost an inevitability. I think that everybody and most of the things that they do is making art of some degree, as long as they're like present doing it. So me drawing is what I choose to make as my like method of making art. So I guess in a lot of ways, like, I make art because I make art, and I choose to make the art that I make because of who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds redundant, but yeah, it makes sense.
So.
Do you think that there's maybe like do you try to make people be better through what you're doing?
No. I don't. No. People are gonna be who they want to be. I don't try to change people's minds. Generally, I'm so like non-confrontational in my own life and in my art and in everything that, like, if somebody's gonna come and talk to me about something, that I'm not gonna try to change their mind about it. And if it's too like out there, then I'm probably just never gonna talk to them again. I'm not the type that's gonna be like, you're disgusting and you shouldn't be thinking those thoughts. And I'm just the kind of guy that's like, okay, and then like walk away and like never talk to them again.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm not trying to change people. Like, am I trying to like make people like aware of certain aspects of themselves, and maybe that changes people? Like, possibly, like, am I trying to like inspire those kind of like mini epiphanies, like tiny epiphanies? Like, yeah, I guess in some ways, like, I am trying to change people with my art, but it's more putting them in a position to have thoughts that might potentially change themselves.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that people should try to be better?
oh, yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that, like I said, like, the more, like, altruistic each of us individually are as a society, the better we all are for it. And, you know, fighting people and, like, judging people based on ridiculous qualifications and, like, none of that makes sense. Like, when you, like, really, like, boil it down. And I think that everybody should try to be better and should try to, but I think that life is, I guess I do approach life in some sort of like how I approach my art. I think that it's so much like a process, and I think that every like decision and conversation is this kind of like evolution of yourself, and it's a really like humanistic a way of approaching it. But I think that it's all about progress and, you know, moving forward and not moving backwards and challenging yourself to look at the world and through other people's perspectives and to live a life of empathy. And
yeah,
I think that everybody should try to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Forgive me for getting, I guess, sort of quasi interpersonal, but like, your wife is an artist. How does your relationship dynamic work being the same sort of artists?
Oh, yeah, I don't know how I could do it without her, honestly. There's just so much, like, stuff with being an artist. Like, people have this, like, romantic idea of what it means to be an artist. Like, like, people from the outside think, like, oh, you know, I just want that sensitive, quiet, like, artistic type or whatever, and boil it down to this, like, genre of person or this archetype. But what it really means is, like, I'm going to go to work and then I'm going to come home on top of work. I'm going to hang out and then I'm going to stay up until, like, 4 a.m, like, drawing and, like, doing stuff. And, you know, like, I'm probably not going to want to hang out with friends today because we have a show and, like, or I have a show in like a week and I need to draw. And people outside of that, like, don't really, they would think that it would get in the way, and it does. Yeah. And I'm not gonna, like, but I'm kind of a homebody anyway, but yeah, like, it's strenuous and it takes a lot of work and you put a lot of thought and hours and you do a lot of writing and you do a lot of reading, and there's a lot of, like, putting yourself out there. And for, like, an introvert, it's, like, kind of uncomfortable, and you have to have a lot of conversations with people about your work, and that's not always comfortable either. And it's just, like, to have somebody that who's also, like, comes from a similar perspective and is also a similar artist too. I feel like if I was an artist and I had like a significant other who was also an artist, but they were making like figure-based art or something, then they wouldn't necessarily understand like where I was approaching like my philosophy behind art. But she like does layering, and a lot of our work kind of feeds each other's work in a lot of ways. We approach like layering in similar ways, and like the nature of like organic forms versus geometric forms, and our visual language is similar, just different. Like we're doing similar things, but from two different perspectives. I'm a lot more analytical, and she's making like non-representational art about like the nature of grief, and she works with, in her day job, she works with Alzheimer's patients, and so a lot of her work is kind of like influenced by those kinds of interactions.
Yeah.
So it really like our energies feed each other, long story short, and I feel like if I was in a relationship with somebody who wasn't an artist, not even somebody who like they have to be in some ways like similar to me, in that to be able to empathize with my point of view, I guess.
Yeah.
And I just need, sometimes I'm kind of like a weak person, I guess. So I need somebody there, not to like affirm that I'm doing a good job. Like I always support the work, and if it fails, then that's part of it, you know. But to support me through the making of the work, and to give me energy in making. And I think that a lot of people think that like having a wife or having a kid like takes energy away from it, but I think that just feeds it in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Do you think that since your work sort of influences each other so much, is there a sense of like your work is almost also hers too?
Yeah.
And vice versa?
In a lot of ways. She works really large, I work really large. So there's just certain things that we can't do by ourselves. Like, so if she's making a grid, like a complicated like grid system on like one of her 5-foot pieces, like she can't hold two sides of a ruler and draw a line.
Yeah.
So like there's always this kind of like collaboration in that way, but like behind her work, like it's her idea. Like she's the decision maker, she's the driving force, and like I'm just there to be a set of hands.
Yeah.
And in my work, if I need her to like help me line something up or like help me hang something, like I'm the one that makes the decisions about my work, and like in a lot of ways she's just a really patient set of hands in that way. So, but we're also like critiquing each other's work constantly, like living around each other's work, making work. Like there's just questions that come up, like, does this look like this? You know, like, is this line straight? Like, should this be more straight? Is it cool that it's blue? Is it cool that it's not as blue? And my kind of perspective informs her perspective. Yeah. So if she asks me a question and I have an opinion about it, and that makes her make a compromise, like, I don't like this, but you like it, so maybe I'll keep part of it. Yeah. You know, that's the kind of thing that's the reason why our work becomes like influences each other. It's not necessarily like because it's like a super romantic, like bubbly, like we're in a relationship, so our pieces look the same or something. But if you looked at our work, like we approach it in such a process-driven way. We approach it in like different, like the same way in a lot of ways, but the work looks totally different. So,
yeah. I guess the last thing I want to, since I asked you about this over text, but like, it's a lot easier to communicate this. Why Australia?
Well, in a lot of ways, she had just been really interested in art therapy, for obvious reasons, because her work is about communicating grief and through visual means. So like making visual art about like feelings, like it just makes it's like the next logical step to like also be an art therapist. And so she read some of the work by this professor there, the director there over in Parramatta, Sydney, about her perspectives on art therapy. Her name's Sheridan Linnell, I believe. But yeah, so we kind of shot for the moon. She applied there. We got accepted. That was the only place she applied. And yeah, we got accepted. We got our visas. We're going.
Yeah. I mean, without getting like way into the logistics of what it means to move from one fucking continent to another fucking continent, how do you do that?
It's a lot of like triaging, you know. You gotta like, you don't have much time, so like certain things in life are more important than other things, and that's just the long and short of it. Like you have to make decisions about like who you give your time to and what you give your time to and what's important to you, and just how you're going to finish it all on the time limit. We leave in 9 days, and we're still trying to figure out. We're still trying to like price compare like different shipping companies and like random stuff like that. And there's just like, it's kind of weird. There's like so much stuff that you don't want to keep, but you feel obligated to keep. And you know, in some ways you just kind of want to be done with it because you've been looking at it for like 2 weeks and you're just like, you know, I don't even care. I just want to give it away, or donate it, and then be done with it. But yeah, so just going through your whole life is kind of weird. From like adolescence to adulthood. Like, I guess I kept some like visual journals of whenever I was in high school and like in middle school. And, you know, I graduated in 2008, so it's almost been 10 years. And it's just like, I haven't even thought about high school in like years. And to go through all that stuff and to go through like all these like childhood like photos and families, and it's just weird. I keep saying weird, but yeah, there's just not really another way to express it.
And how do you think this will influence your work?
I don't know. I mean, there's really no way of telling. My work is so influenced based on like my kind of philosophy on life in some ways, and this kind of like notion of the absurd and notion of art as in conceptualizing like representation, like the pipe is not a pipe stuff. So yeah, I mean, like I can't foresee it being like that drastic of a change. But if I was like a landscape painter or something, it would change. So I don't know. It's going to be totally different. So yeah, she's going to school for 2 years, and then I'm going to find like an MFA program, a Master of Fine Arts program over there, and just be a better artist. Keep making stuff. Try to get shows. It's a bigger artist venue. It's a bigger city. Artists flock to like urban centers. So yeah, basically what I'm going to try to do is just learn a lot more about computers and technology and mesh it with what I'm already doing now.
Cool.
I think part of the progress of like making art is like realizing what your strengths are, keeping those, and then adding stuff to it. So like finding some like weaknesses that you have and making them strengths eventually, and keep going. So once you get bored, just find something you know nothing about and slap it on top of what you're already doing.
Cool. Nathan, thank you for doing this podcast. Where can we find your stuff? I think this podcast will go up in like 3 weeks, so it's probably like after your show is over.
Yeah. Well, I have a domain, but I changed my name whenever my wife and I got married, so I'm still like making a website with my new name, and so I don't have a website right now, but I have an Instagram.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of ways is more useful than a website anyway.
Yeah.
Because everybody can see it. I
Yeah.
think having like a formal website is kind of like almost archaic at this point.
It depends on what you use it for, I guess.
Yeah.
But what's your Instagram then?
I think it's Nathan M. Kent. I can't remember if there's any dots or anything. Let me...
Dots or underscores or whatever. It's always the worst because mine has an underscore.
Nathan underscore M as in monkey underscore Kent, Kent.
All right. That should be easy enough to find. Again, it's hard to represent what art looks like through an audio podcast. So you really just have to see it to kind of understand what the heck we've been talking about this entire time. Again, thank you. And I'm Santiago Ramones. I do have the archaic website, which is santiagoramones.com, where you can find the music that I make, and this podcast. I always end every podcast. Wait, hold on. It does help, whatever statistics or whatever, if you rate and review this podcast. And even just, like, contact me. Like, I don't even know who listens to this. But, I mean, if you do, just, like, say hi, say you like the podcast, say you don't like the podcast, be like, man, it sounds, like, awful or something. I don't know, just tell me something. But I would appreciate some feedback. And now I always end every podcast with my 3 things, which are love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong. Thanks for listening.